right, I think. Looks like we're good to go for our third broadcast. Hello, everybody. We're doing our usual good old 35 seconds to a minute getting everything set up so that you can get a live link to this particular broadcast. It looks like everything's good on the preview, so that means all I have to do is click around a little aimlessly and give you the link specifically for this video. All right, let's do it. Show me my video. Sometimes it takes a little while for it to show up on my YouTube page so that I can, let you all see this video in particular. It's working on it, I promise. Okay, here we go. Live now. That's the video. Okay, so here we are with the unique video link. You'll be getting that in just a moment. And we'll get things started. I noticed a few of you had subscribed to this YouTube channel. That is an excellent idea. I recommend doing it. Okay. And then we'll just head on over here and I'll get the PowerPoint set up and we'll get going. I don't see anyone in chat yet, and that's totally okay because I just hit the live button. It's just those of you watching this as an archive that have to kind of deal with my yammering here. Everybody else kind of gets the clean version without all this yammering about. Here's a link to the third video. Okay, making sure that everyone gets a copy in their email as well. Okay, it looks like everybody should have it now. So in just a few moments, we should see some people in here. And I'll just go ahead and move this over here. I know I got a fair few questions about how to upload videos and things like that. I've been helping you as I can. I think most everybody who asked a question has been served by now. If that is not correct and you're watching this video either tonight on Thursday night or on Friday morning or sometime on Friday, let's go ahead and turn my video game Steam thing off. How about that? And I'll sign out of Skype too. We don't want those people bothering us. Yeah, see, you can really tell my state of mind here. It's been a busy day. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the actual show on the road. I was saying something about helping people. Yes, I believe I've helped everybody who's asked me as of about 5:30 p.m. on Thursday. So if you have not gotten a reply to me, it might behoove you to send another message. Either I thought I replied to you, or the little internet kerfuffle from yesterday maybe got it to the point where I didn't think I was, or I thought I had replied, but I hadn't hit the button or whatever. So please make sure that you get help if I haven't already. I believe that I am done. I'm not done helping you, but I believe that I've answered everybody. If this is not the case, you might want to send me another message, and I apologize for any ineffectiveness there. Okay, so today we are covering the informative speaking sources, and I'm not on my actual live broadcast page, so that ain't not good. Let me address that so that I can actually see what's happening. Um, wow, like I said, I'm a little bit out of practice. I need to do this every semester instead of the every other summer that I've been doing it. Okay. All right, there we go. We'll call that acceptable. All right. So informative speaking, sources, and outlining. So those are our subjects for today. So let's go ahead and dive into what is informative speaking. Now, in terms of the course, the informative speech is your first, it's your first research speech. Your introductory speech is is kind of something that I kind of added to the curriculum just so you could get used to doing something quick that you wouldn't have to do a lot of work for um, in order to um, get started on getting familiar with your equipment. But this is going to be your first, I will say, quote unquote, real assignment. This is what is going to have a lot of points associated with that. We'll go over that in a second. But this is the first big one. So take good notes, ask good questions, either in chat or through email or on the forum that I'm about to create. And because this is going to be the one that's going to be worth a lot of points. The other ones were kind of just worth completion credit. This is the one where I'm actually going to grade you on the rubric that we'll go over briefly now, but we'll go over more detail as the time arises. This speech will likely be due in about a week and a half. All right. That's the time frame there. So I would say not necessarily this coming Wednesday, but the Wednesday after that. So you've got about a solid 10 to 12 days to work on this. I'm too lazy to do the math, but you've got a fair little bit to work on it. So speaking to inform is one of the most common forms of giving remarks in public. That's one of the reasons why we cover it in the course. That's supposed to say news programming, but some things like news programming, tutorials on new software, do-it-yourself videos on YouTube. Um, Gosh, I mean any of those kinds of presentations are all informative. They're not of the other variety, which would be persuasive. Um, so even videos like this one, as amateurish as they are, is also a form of um, informative presentation. So the goal of the informative speech is always the same. You want to leave the audience with more knowledge about a topic than how they came into your presentation. Okay, and usually when we get to the outline section in a bit, the goal of your presentation you can literally write down as to inform on your outline. It's nothing fancy. It's very direct. Um, there's what you want. Your goal of an informative speech is if your speech topic is narwhals. Your goal is to have the audience walk away with knowing more about narwhals than they came into your presentation. That's it. That's the extent of an informative speech. Um, so for practical purposes for the course, man, I did not spell well when I was writing this. Um, informative speeches can take two forms. You can give a demonstration type speech, which would be to show the audience how to do a process, or a traditional presentation, giving information orally and or visually. And of course, in this class, it's going to be orally or and visually, not or visually. But in the real world, sometimes you can make, your boss might want you to create a PowerPoint, but they maybe don't want you to give a spoken presentation. And yes, those kinds of things happen. I was asked to do a PowerPoint presentation on how to do. This happened just the other day. How to upload ratings to something called TK20, which is one of the rubrics we use for the education majors that take communication courses. And I wasn't going to be giving a presentation, but I had to prepare a PowerPoint on it with visual aids and little step-by-step, little things like this to help people figure it out. So you can do a presentation visually, but of course for this class, it is a speaking class, so you'll be giving yours orally. So sorry if you were a little hopeful there. What makes a good informative topic? So this being a speech where you have to research or come up with the details for things, you have to choose a topic. So kind of on my little real life rant here. In real life, your boss or whatever equivalent person will ask you to prepare a presentation on something you know about due to your work duties or some other thing that maybe you have been exposed to or have experience in. All right, that's why in companies it's great to have a diverse group of people because then you can, well, ask, as if you're looking at this from the perspective of the manager or the management, you can ask people who have different experiences to share that experience, and you can have more solutions or more viewpoints on how to solve problems that your group is being exposed to. And of course, they want those things, and when you give those kinds of presentations, you're giving an informative speech. All right, so in real life, in a way, your topics will be given to you. Um, and they'll seem very natural because they'll be relevant to things that you're actually doing as part of your role in whatever organization you're a part of. Um, Now, in this class, it's a little artificial because I want to help you give an informative speech, but we're not really engaged in another project. We're not cleaning up the rainforest. So we don't have that kind of central organization for you, so you get to choose your own topic. Um, so the best informative speech topics in terms of advice for this class are a topic that you personally already have knowledge of. So if you are knowledgeable, say, about the rainforest or about narwhals or what have you, that would be a good topic, at least with this check mark here. If it's a demonstration speech, then you need to pick a process you can already do without guidance from someone else. Um, After doing this, teaching Comm 220 or Comm 210 rather for 10 years now, some people try to up their game. They're like, this is college. I need to up my game a little bit and stretch my wings and push my horizons and whatever feel good quote you want to give there. And so they'll pick a process or they'll pick something where they haven't really done it before and they've done it really for the first time maybe when they rehearse their demonstration speech for their informative speech. Um, Not good. Those speeches do not go well. Um, I had a guy that gave a speech in the classroom once that wanted to show us how to do ultimate frisbee. He had never played ultimate frisbee before, and he was trying to show us how to throw it. And to his credit, he threw that frisbee really well in the classroom. He just gave it a light flick of the wrist so that it would just kind of gently waft through the air. Unfortunately, it just gently wafted through the air and hit a girl in the nose and gave her a bloody nose. And so he was part of I won't say, it was kind of humorous. I know I'm a terrible person, but these two students had been forming a romantic relationship. And so I'm sure he was mortified that his flying disc had struck the apple of his eye there. Um, in the moment, we were not laughing, though. I mean, of course, afterwards, we think it's pretty funny. But in any case, the lesson I want to give you with this is that if you're going to do a demonstration speech, for goodness sake, pick something that you already know how to do and you don't need any guidance from someone else. All right. A topic that is related to another good topic idea or another good marker or indicator of a good topic is that it is related to an activity or related to knowledge that you engage in frequently. All right. Um, so if you're a server at Olive Garden and you want to give us a speech about Italian cuisine and how it might actually be different than what we get at Olive Garden or whatever, go for it. That would be an interesting topic. It's something that's related that you know about, and also something that maybe you can do a little bit of research on too and learn too. But again, it's something that you'll be very familiar with. And of course, at the bottom here is something that you think the audience would find interesting. And I understand that when you're trying to think about or wondering about what would my audience find interesting, this is, at least for now, this is speculation to an extent on your part. In a couple weeks, when we do your persuasive speech, which will be your final speech, um, we'll actually go through the process of audience analysis, which we'll create a survey that your students will take and then hand back to you. And by hand back to you, I mean, of course, this is all happening online remotely. Um, but that is what we'll do then. So for now, you're just kind of speculating what you think people would find interesting. So in, again, the spirit of giving you some advice, here are some bad topic ideas in the hopes that only good ones will be left over. Um, and again, this is one of those subjective things. Um, I say here the big bullet point is to avoid overdone topics. Things like smoking risks, alcohol abuse risk, drinking age stuff, and or drinking and driving kind of things, marijuana either being dangerous or needing to be legal. These are just things that are just way overdone in terms of I guess, my patience. So I'm really sorry. I don't really mean to censor you in your um, political opinion about medical marijuana. Um, Maybe that would be a great um, persuasive speech topic because you can go into more detail and propose a unique solution. Um, but in terms of an informative topic, just kind of giving facts about drinking or giving facts about smoking or giving facts about marijuana, those are things that have been so saturated in our public discourse that it's not likely to be new information to anyone in the audience. And that's really why it's not about how I feel about the topic. It's more about what I think as an instructor, again, having done this for a while, what I think is probably um, um, going to be oversaturated. So those kinds of topics probably won't reveal any new information to anyone. Similarly, if you're going to do a demonstration speech, try to pick something that maybe people don't already know how to do. I've had students try to give demonstration speeches about like how to tie your shoes. Everybody knows how to tie their shoes by now. It's not really new information. It's not really interesting information. Unless you have like a super rare, super fast, super effective way of tying your shoes, it's not going to be a very interesting speech. Um, so those are things to avoid. They're just oversaturated topics. Again, with the importance of exercise, oversaturated a little bit. You want to avoid dry statistical topics. You know, unfortunately, the way that we give presentations like this is not necessarily very effective. So you want to find something that you're not going over a lot of facts or figures. You should have facts and you can have statistics inside your presentation. Um, but if your presentation is about um, the quarterly earnings for Apple Computer, that is not necessarily a great topic for you to um, embark upon. It's just going to be too dry. Now, if you can do an informative speech about the cultural contribution of Apple, that's probably going to have more variety of information in it that you can then work into your presentation. That'll be more interesting than just some math and how it changes over time. Try to avoid major holidays and their various origins. This is another one of those, in addition to the topics up here and maybe the importance of exercise, it seems like every semester we get a good 3 or 4 students out of 20 that are like, hey, we'll be giving this speech in June, and June is really close to July. And what happens in July is the 4th of July. And I think a lot of people would want to hear a speech about how that holiday came about. Um, Not really. I mean, again, kind of up here with these topics, it's that it's very oversaturated. People, they watch the History Channel, or they had in elementary school they had classes on or subjects about how these various holidays came about. Um, Similarly, if you're living in Indianapolis and you want to give a speech about the Indianapolis 500, again, at least for me, because I'm also a native of Indianapolis, like I know a lot about that event. It's not going to be a lot of new information because it's something that people in Indiana, especially Indianapolis, are very familiar with. It's not going to seem interesting. Now, if you feel like you have maybe a festival that's really celebrated, and it's kind of celebrated just in your community, um, then that's great. That would be something really interesting to share. I had a student a few years ago give a speech about a holiday called Juneteenth, and it's a I forget what day it is, but it's in June, and it's one of the teen days, as you can probably tell by the name Juneteenth. But it's celebrated on the day that Texas freed the slaves, and it's a holiday that basically celebrates kind of the end of the Civil War, but also the beginning of the Emancipation / Reconstruction period. And it was very interesting because I had lived 28 years of my life in Indiana, and at that point I was 28 years old, and I had never heard of this holiday before. And my community didn't celebrate it, but hers did. So that was a really interesting and good speech. So if you happen to know of like a locally celebrated holiday, um, then do it. But otherwise, if it's like a big, huge, 4th of July is not a good choice for this speech. Anyway, any topic that seeks to build good habits in the audience. This is another kind of a red flag. This is mostly because if you're giving a speech about, the ills, even like the ills of smoking here, um, this can end up becoming what we call a persuasive speech. Um, and that's a different genre of speaking than informative speaking. All right, so it's kind of like doing the wrong assignment. If your goal is to I want to inform people about smoking risks in the hope that they stop smoking. That last little bit where you say, in the hopes that they stop smoking, is actually your clue that you're going into a persuasive speaking mindset. And that's a different kind of speech. So you want to avoid that. Keep it about, fun facts about narwhals. Um, Here's Apple's contribution to popular culture, things like that. That's going to keep you on the informative speech um, track. If you're thinking like, let's talk about Apple Computer and why it's better than Windows. Again, that part where you say and why it's better than Windows is where you're going to be in a persuasive mindset, and you want to avoid that for now. All right. So that's my advice on avoiding some bad topics. Again, the idea here is that maybe you'll find a good topic if you kind of avoid those pitfalls. It seems like the video is stuttering on YouTube a little bit. I'm gonna just kind of refresh here and see what's going on with that. Okay, looks fine. Um, so the one thing you'll need to do for this speech is you'll need to turn in an outline. I don't have a deadline for your outline just yet. We'll go over your assignment for the coming week at the end of this presentation. But you will need to create an outline and turn it in for this speech. So here's outlining in a nutshell. We're going to read a chapter in the book about outlining next week. But again, I want to get you kind of thinking about it because part of your homework assignment, spoiler alert, is that you need to be thinking about the material you're going to put in your outline. So it's kind of helpful to know what exactly, not necessarily what exactly, but what generally your outline needs to contain. So a good outline contains full sentences, but does not contain verbatim every word you plan on saying. So for example, as I'm going through this PowerPoint here, as you can see, I've basically written out these points as if they were full sentences. I know I've missed some punctuation here and there and pretty much everywhere on this particular slide. But I have not written out exactly every word I plan on saying. This outline on this presentation basically serves as a way for my memory to be jogged about things that I already know about. All right, that's kind of the way that your outline will be written, is that you will have full sentences. It does not contain verbatim every word you plan on saying, because you can kind of improvise that. It's really just there to jog your memory. All right. You outline show how ideas are subordinated, which means that they show what's the main idea and what's the supporting idea. So this is another example here. Outline show how ideas are subordinated, like how I put examples or details underneath things I want you to remember. All right, that's probably the best example of what that means there. So I'm sure you've had different rules or teachers go over different rules for outlining. I'm going to be honest with you, all of those are kind of arbitrary. I know they probably said things like, you start with a Roman numeral and then you go to a little capital letter A and then you go to a little letter A. I mean, all that is fine. They want a particular style, I suppose, but in the end of the day, an outline is just showing what ideas support what ideas and what ideas are the biggest ideas. All right, so the stuff that's in the biggest font and over furthest to the left are the big ideas. The ones that are indented and the font gets progressively smaller, those ideas are the examples and the details of the examples, okay? And that's just kind of how it works. So you don't need to worry, at least for right now, things like, well, if you don't have an A, you can't have, or you don't have a B, then you don't put an A. Whatever word you can use the outline program and thing in Word with wild abandon in this class because I'm not worried about stuff like that. I do want you to show what is your main idea and what example or detail is supporting it. And if your word thing spits out, Roman numeral 1, capital letter A, I'm not going to lose my guts over the fact that you have an A without a B. Just don't even worry about those rules. I just want you to understand or show me what's the main idea, what's the example or detail. That's all I care about. If you even end up turning in something that looks like this with just a triangle here and a smaller triangle with a smaller text here, that's fine. Again, you can just use whatever format Word gives you with wild abandon there. You don't have to worry about it. Just make sure that details and examples are indented and smaller than the main idea. Okay. So a typical outline will have your main points, the things you want your audience to remember being the primary bullet point like this, and then you'll have your research or you'll have examples being indented like this. Okay, that's a typical outline, and that's all you really need to do and worry about. Each main idea needs at least one supporting idea, at least for the purposes of this class. Okay, so this is going to be my arbitrary rule after talking about how people give arbitrary rules. Is that if you have a big idea, I want you to have at least an example or some kind of research or something, detail, to support that main idea. Okay, that's and that way you don't have to feel like you're padding your speech out. Like all of that stuff is going to be productive. All right. If you can stop at one if you feel like it, or you could have more. It really depends on how much detail or how emphatic you want to make a particular point. Okay. There's some artistry in that. And again, we'll kind of go over this more in a moment here. So let's kind of look at the example in your workbook. Now, in your workbook, and I have my copy here. My copy is probably older than yours. It's from the fall of 2016. The book has not, or the content has not changed since then. I'm looking at the skeletal outline for the informative speech. And for me, it's on page 55. For you, it might be slightly different depending on what year or semester you've got. But around 55, it's a green piece of paper. Says at the top, skeletal outline for the informative speech is there. Again, consult your table of contents for the exact page number if you have a different kind of book. But um, you'll see a nice skeletal outline here. And what it contains is it contains every single part of your introduction, what your body can look like. And I say what body can look like because it just says main point, sub points, got like 3 or 4 sub points for each main point. Again, that's arbitrary. That's not a requirement. That's just trying to show you an example. Okay. And then it has all the parts of a conclusion. We will talk about introductions and conclusions on Sunday evening. So don't worry about that right now. But on page 55, if you're or thereabouts, is a skeletal outline for the informative speech. It will show you exactly the kind of structure and what kinds of things need to be in your speech. And again, it's pretty, I guess I would say ambiguous. I would say more that it's more open for you, right? It says body, main point. The main point is whatever you want it to be. All right. As long as it's not one of those restricted topics that we talked about just before. Okay. And then I have a little thing here to kind of jog your memory here in case you don't have a book yet. This is kind of what the general outline is. Again, we'll talk about, there's like 5 parts to an introduction and there's more parts to a conclusion. We'll cover that Sunday. So here's your assignment for Monday at 11:59 p.m. All right. On the designated form, I want you to start a thread and declare your specific purpose, or which would mean tell everyone what your topic is. I would also like for you to try to craft the body of your speech. So that means you would come up with the main points and also their little supporting details. Again, one supporting detail example or something that you had to look up for each one of those main points. This body of your speech, the speech itself needs to be 4 to 5 minutes long, which means that about 3 main points each with at least one supporting example. Okay, so again, it's about the arbitrariness behind that one example for each main point rule is trying to help you get to that 4 to 5 minute mark. And you will write out your source citations as part of your outline. So that will be one of your bullet points underneath your main point at least, okay? So that can, again, that can stand in for your supporting example or detail. So that a lot of this stuff will be determined for you. We'll talk about source citations literally in just a couple of moments. Do not worry again about your introduction or conclusion. If you do look at your example in your textbook, you'll notice that under the introduction and the conclusion, they have what they call, in the introduction, they call it a preview, where you list out your main points. Again, you don't have your main points yet until you've written your body. Same with the review and the conclusion. You don't have your main points, so you can't review them. So you actually do the introduction and the conclusion part of your outline last. Right now, what I really just want you to do is come up with a topic and at least start writing out your main points. All right, start crafting the body of your speech. All right, um, because after that, the quote unquote real work is going to begin in terms of creating that into a presentation, right? Going from a written document to a spoken one. Um, Spoken document. That's an interesting thing I just invented. Um, but going from a written document to a spoken presentation is going to take some time. And that's why we want to get the writing part out of the way first, and the body and the topic, um, depending, I guess, on how quickly it takes for you to find a topic, that probably will take you right up until Monday. All right. Um, but given that this is Thursday, so giving you the weekend to think about it, giving you a weekend to kind of look stuff up. Again, the point of this isn't to push you to find something you don't know about, right? This should be a topic that you are pretty familiar with, and all you're doing is sharing that topic with the audience. All right, so it's kind of up to you to decide what maybe are the three main points that are the most important about this topic that you already know about that you want to share, and just make sure that you have at least one example for each of those main points that you want to go over with the class. Okay, so hopefully it doesn't really it takes you shorter than it sounds like it will. It shouldn't be, hopefully, it shouldn't be something that really rattles your brain. If it turns out that I get a lot of people asking for help, or that there's a lot of people saying I'm going to be behind on this, then probably I'll push that deadline a little bit. We're not quite to that point in the summer session where I'm worried too much about deadlines and pushing them back a day or two. Um, so that's a possibility. But again, I want you to do the best college try that you can to get a topic and your main points plus examples ready on the forum post for Monday at 11:59 p.m. All right, and again, don't worry about introductions or conclusions. Speaking of sources, so if you need to look up a source for this topic, um, you should have what we call an oral source citation. And as we go on in this project, eventually, even if you don't feel like you need one right now, we will work in some kind of research into your speech. All right. So if you include one now, as we're kind of forming your speech in the early stages, you're saving yourself some work. If you want to avoid using sources, you can't, because spoiler alert, I'm going to ask that you do in the coming week that you find some research on the topic that you've identified. In any case, here's how you orally cite your sources. We'll probably give you a reminder of this as well, but you need to write it in your outline when you have them. So orally, you need to have a signpost word that lets us know you are about to say something not of your own personal knowledge. Then you mention the author, the publication, and the date published or accessed or copywritten. All right. Um, so here's that and the bullet point that's kind of easy here. Signpost, author's name, publication title, date published or copyrighted or accessed in that order of preference. I guess I kind of flubbed up here now that I look at it. The date access should be the last thing that you use for a date, right? So some things, like if you're using a website, which is totally fine. I do not mind if you use a credible website, that's written by an organization or a person that has experience in the topic. If you're giving a speech about the NFL, quoting the NFL's website is more than appropriate. And they may not have, some of this information. So, for example, the NFL's website probably won't have an author's name on it. Instead, the author is the organization. All right. And sometimes it kind of is the same thing as the publication title. If you're looking at the NFL's website, there won't be an author's name. But it is the official NFL website. All right. So that is the author and the publication. All right. And that's exactly what you would say. You would say, according to the NFL's website. on, October 26th, whatever day it is, the date was published. Sometimes you can't find the date something was published, and in which case you can scroll usually down to the bottom of the web page or the bottom of the. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. What done happened? Ah, that was strange. My screen just went black for no reason. Okay. Anyway, you can't find the date published, so usually you can scroll down to the bottom. Usually it's at the bottom of the page or it's the bottom of the website. They'll have a copyright, that C in a circle that says, whatever year it was. And that's the date that you can use. And failing all of those things, if you just can't find the date published, you can't find any time it was copywritten or the website was copyrighted, then you have to use the date accessed. In other words, the day that you've just found it. All right, so that's kind of the bottom of the barrel is the date access. Okay, and then so here's just an example. If I was quoting something from Stan Lee, I would say, according to Stan Lee in Time Magazine from October 27th, 2016, yada yada blah blah blah. All right, the quote would follow this, of course. It would follow this citation. Um, so but that's it, right? You don't need to worry about the article title. You don't need to worry about anything other than the author's name or the publication, right? You don't need to worry about the volume. You don't need to worry about if it was published in the spring. Sometimes if you're doing an academic journal, it'll be like, spring 2017. Um, again, that's the date. Really, that can function as the date, so you don't need to be, according to the Journal of Comics, I don't even think there is such a thing, spring 2018 edition, published on May 22nd, 2018. You don't necessarily need all that information. You can just use the more specific date. Just tell us it's from the journal. Okay, that's it. It's really that quick. Orally citing your sources if you need to use it. Again, at a different point, I will require you to add research to this speech, even if you don't have one for this first assignment. So this is something, again, we'll probably review it, or at least I'll write out another example so to jog your memory. So we will be using this, and you can use it now, but you will use it later. All right, and again, let's just kind of go back to your assignment page here. So this is, again, is your assignment for Monday night, 11:59 p.m. This is, of course, on top of all the little things that I had you do this week with Chapter 1 and your introductory speech. I'm moving my way through those. You don't have to worry about, too much about me putting the screws to your grade on that. It's basically I want to watch your video, and then I'm going to give you credit for it. That's it. I'm not evaluating it on any kind of a rubric. So that's that. I see that I started streaming about 38 minutes ago, so I'm going to go ahead and open the floor. I see that there's a few people watching. Looks like there's 2 of you watching on YouTube and maybe 5 people watching on mobile. So I'm going to kind of chill out here for just a second and see if you have any questions in the chat, and if not, then I'll sign off. Otherwise, we'll just sit here a minute and let you type. Oh, I guess I should say while I am waiting here, if you want some more information about the informative speech, we'll go over the rubric on Sunday. I've already been live for 40 minutes. I don't want to inundate you with a lot of information. And you're not really, I'll be honest, the assignment description in the workbook really leaves a lot to be desired. But if you are curious, there is an assignment description in your workbook. And for me, it's on page, oh, come on, like one of the first assignments. It's in the orangish, goldenrodish section after the school calendar. You can just hear me flipping through here. On mine, it's on page 41, so it'll be around there for you as well. It's a yellow piece of paper, but there's a narrative about what the goal of the assignment is. And It just simply says the speaker will deliver an informative speech with emphasis placed on introduction, conclusion, and transitions. Again, we'll cover those on Sunday. You must use the important appropriate pattern of arrangement. Again, we kind of went over that with the outline thing, but we'll go over more of that on Sunday. This speech is worth 100 points. Your discussion instructor will give you more specific information as to the topic of choice, which I did today. So then there's some bullet points there about why you need to have an introduction, which we should cover that later. But that's kind of the description in your workbook for the assignment. Again, the point of this is to help give you practice about giving in a speech and making people that listen to you have more knowledge on a topic than what they had when they went in. That's really it. And there's no real special technique to it except to make sure that you've chosen a topic that will be interesting and that people don't necessarily already know about, but that you know about. Okay, that's kind of the secret here, and that's really it. That's kind of your assignment. Create a short presentation that's 4 to 5 minutes long on a topic that you know about, but maybe other people don't. Okay, and I know that that last part is kind of speculation, and that's fine. We're covering audience analysis another time. I don't see anything in the chat, so again, I want to thank you all for your patience with yesterday, and thank you for watching today. I hope you have a great evening, or morning, or afternoon, or whatever it is when you happen to be watching this. Um, Thank you so much, everybody. Looks like the course is going pretty well. I've gotten almost everybody's introductory speeches, and almost everybody's been in the discussion forum. So I'm really happy with the level of participation and your work ethic so far. So keep up the good work, and I'll be seeing you on Sunday. Have a good one.